Okay, good morning. Can everybody hear me? I want to share some experiences with you from a course that I've been teaching for about 7 years on data warehousing, data analysis, and reporting, and how I'm using a game to tie some things together. So the game, of course, is called BIG. It's a really big idea, business intelligence game. Traditional assignments in any course, particularly a database course, tend to be isolated. It's very challenging to come up with a series of assignments that all kind of tie together. They also don't really engage the students, and the primary motivation to complete these assignments is a grade, which is not a very good motivator. So by introducing a game, we can now require students to apply knowledge, combine skills, and evaluate the results. They're actively engaged in this game. They're competing and collaborating with other students, and it's just a far better experience for them. More importantly, students then begin to take ownership of their learning, and they're now creating and constructing their own goals. It's no longer about getting a grade. It's about, I want to compete in this game. I want to have fun. To give you a little bit of background on the course, it's a 14-week course. The first week we spend just kind of introducing at a high level what business intelligence is. We spend about 6 weeks on data warehousing, 3 weeks on data mining, 4 weeks on reporting. Now, we have 2 degrees in our department, information systems and computer science, and this is typically a computer science class, although we have several IS students who take the class as well. So one of the challenges there is that while I might like to have people doing some real hardcore CS programming, I also try and keep it relatively light enough that, that the IS students can get a lot of value out of the class as well. So just to look a little closely here, the data warehousing modules go into dimensional modeling, the ETL process, aggregates, and really the foundation of how to go about building this architecture. Data mining, we cover typical learning algorithms. And then when we get to the reporting, that's where we talk about data quality, data analysis. The students build dashboards. We talk about information visualization. We also go into some reporting tools. So you can see we're covering a broad area of topics here, and we're really trying to develop people who can go out and build these systems and use the systems. And that's really one of the big keys. Is that I'm not just trying to focus on how you build these things, I'm also trying to get them to understand how people use them. So my early observations were that studying these components in isolation is really insufficient. I want students to see the big picture. I want them to experience a live business intelligence environment and to really experience how decisions are made. So again, it's not enough to just build these things. I want them to understand the bigger picture. So I try throughout the course to put my students into 3 roles. The first role is the developer, and this is the primary purpose of the class, to develop all of the tools, to be able to develop reports, to be able to build dashboards. But then I also try to bring in components where they're actually having to do the analysis and they're having to make decisions. And this is really what led to the game idea, is that these 3 roles can be incorporated within a game. So the goal of the game is to maximize revenue. And the game just simulates a pretty simple grocery store. Purposely chose a grocery store because the products, the inventory are physical. Many of the products are perishable, so there's issues there with having to move the inventory and manage the inventory. So the game engine generates orders on a daily basis. At some point at a higher level, maybe the game is going on continuously, but initially the students are kind of setting things up and then they're pushing a button and they're essentially just generating orders for a day and seeing how their business performs. So again, the students get to analyze the sales and then they're going to take action. So some of the simple actions that they can take is they can adjust the prices. Obviously lowering the price increases sales, raising the price decreases sales. They can purchase inventory, they can create promotions. So as the game goes along and the levels move into more and more complex complexity, the actions can become more complex as well. So in the initial level, we only have 3 products. We have milk, bread, and eggs. We have a single table in the warehouse, which is a sales fact table, very simple, standard table. And the students have to query that warehouse to analyze the sales. So at this point, they have no tools. other than a SQL prompt or whatever kind of SQL client that they want to use. So they're doing all of this really outside of the game. And the user interface basically allows them to change prices and to purchase additional inventory, additional units of milk, bread, and eggs. And that's about all they can do, so it's pretty limited. They're just trying to learn how this is going to work, how the game is going to work. But then, as I say, the complexity of the game continues to increase at each level. For example, they're getting more products and they're able to take more actions. The players now have to enhance their BI environment if they want to continue to compete and continue to progress in the game. So they have to be able to extend the data warehouse. They start to develop dashboards and reports. So instead of having to run queries, now they're seeing how tools like dashboards and reports can make the business decisions more effective. And then they start to develop data mining applications. As they're advancing to higher levels, the learning outcomes, there's a learning outcome defined for each level of the game, and there are embedded learning activities within the game that teach the skills and the concepts that are required to achieve each of the learning outcomes. So these turn out to be those individual isolated assignments, but they're learning about whatever this particular concept or skill is with that isolated assignment that has nothing to do with anything else. And then they're taking that knowledge and they're bringing it back into the game and they're incorporating that to do something that, again, is going to help them gain a competitive advantage. And as they complete a particular learning activity, now new functionality is unlocked in the game. For example, they might now have access to SPSS so they can start to build their own data mining applications. So again, they can play the game more effectively. Each learning activity consists of a pre-test assignment, so this is really the research portion of it. Let's see where they are before the activity. There's one or more video tutorials that are explaining the concept or the skill. There's a set of exercises that they work through, and they have some worked out examples so that they can work independently at a self-pace. And then there's a post-test assignment. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to create an environment. It's an online environment, so this is something they're doing outside of the class. And there's enough scaffolding in there that we're able to help students at many different levels. So if you're familiar with some of the multimedia research, the stronger students are going to skip right through the examples, and they're maybe not going to look at a single worked out example. Whereas the weaker students, when faced with a challenge, when faced with an exercise, they might not even know where to start. So they can start by just watching one of the worked out examples. So it's a self-paced, kind of an online environment that allows everybody to work at their own pace. So some of the example learning activities, for example, would be to develop an inventory schema. So for example, the video tutorial might explain to them how a periodic fact table works, and it might explain the concept of days supply of inventory and GEMROI. And then again, they will, after learning that, they will bring that into the game and they will create their own fact tables and they will extend the ETL process and they will begin now to manage their inventory more effectively. Other examples would be managing slowly changing dimensions so that they can see maybe what's happening with their customers, what's happening with their products, how to evaluate a promotion. So we're teaching them about concepts like lift and cannibalization, and again, how to do different kinds of analyses with SPSS. And when they complete one of those activities, then the SPSS functionality is then unlocked and they can go on and use those tools. After a while, the rules are pretty simple. So once they begin to catch on to what some of the simple rules are, we need to make this more interesting with some disruptors. So for example, there will be a news feed that's saying there's a snowstorm coming, and how are they going to accommodate for that snowstorm? There might be product shortages. There might be events, news feeds talking about certain promotions and things that other customers are doing. So again, just try to make the game a little more interesting at some of the higher levels. This is basically what the interface looks like. It's really pretty simple. It's showing you at the top what day are they currently playing, because of course there's a simulation date that's different from the actual date. Then there's a play button, so when they press the play button, the system generates the orders for that day. And the generation, of course, is based on the prices that the student has set and the amount of inventory that they have and other factors like that, so that if they're setting their store up to be successful, then their sales are going to be successful and revenue is going to increase, or conversely. And there we're also seeing the news feeds. So as new news feeds are coming in, they've basically got an RSS type, highlight what's the title of the news feed. They can click on that and see the details. And then they have their learning activities. So they can always go back at any point. Once they've worked through a learning activity, they can always click and get back to that activity and do it over again if they want. And as new learning activities appear, they appear at the top and they have to complete that. So the way that I use this in the class is that I will tell the students, okay, by this Friday you have to complete learning activity 1, and by this particular day you have to complete learning activity 2, and so on. So if the student really is not engaged at all by the game, then we're just back to your typical environment where they're working through isolated projects. But from what I've seen from my experience thus far, the students really are getting interested in the game, and this is engaging them, and they're spending more time now playing the game and really learning these concepts than they would if they were just doing the learning activities in isolation. So the last thing, this work has been generously supported by IBM. So at some point it is my goal to package this all up and put it up on the academic initiative and make it available to everybody. And perhaps at some point we might be able to have a workshop where we can all get together and talk about how some of you could use this in your classes if there's enough interest. Thank you.